People think, oh, you're just sitting at home clicking buttons and then you have more money. That's unfair. Most people have that attitude that they think investing is like a hobby. You're very good, you make a lot of money, but what you do is not contributing value to the world. If you're a doctor and then the patient's healthy, value created. But if you're an investor, people think, oh, you're just sitting at home clicking buttons and then you have more money. That's unfair. But when you really think about it economically, steering that capital into where it's best used to generate value for humans is by an enormous distance the most important thing. Because if you're this construction worker, sure, you can build a house. But if you're a bad investor and you decide to steer all the assets into war, you will destroy much more houses than this poor guy built. When you really think about it, investing is the ultimate form of governance for a civilization. And that's why we need so many investors, because governance is very complex.
All right, welcome everybody to another great episode at the Ideal Investor Show. Today we have another wonderful guest with a diversified portfolio, and that's what we want to talk about besides AGI and the age of abundance. And so welcome Joe Bhakdi or Johannes, however you prefer. Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show.
Both are great. Both work, Johannes or Joe. Most people know me as Joe Bhakdi on YouTube, and Joe or Johannes on X. So both is great.
Yeah, well, I'm very, very proud that you agreed to come to the show. I know that we are still small, but we're growing, and we're very excited with season 5 to have people that invest maybe predominantly or significantly in Tesla, but then also in other assets. And I know that's true for you. Before we get into that and the age of abundance, would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself? What are you doing? Where are you coming from? How did you get into what you're doing today?
Absolutely. I was born in Germany. I think you too. So
Yep.
we have that in common. And I'm an economist by trade. So I studied economics back then. My parents are both medical doctors and researchers, scientists. So it was a new thing. But I always wondered, I had this just one anecdote. We were at some birthday party, 50th birthday. I was like maybe 15 or 16. The friend of my parents who has a big heart clinic, cardiovascular surgeon. And everyone is standing in this beautiful garden and having these conversations. And I was always incredibly bored by doctors. I don't know why, because I heard it all day long. It's like, I know you all have you're doing all that stuff. I was never super duper interested, to be honest. Maybe I heard it too much. And there was this one guy who looked like cool, like also 50, standing alone at one of these tables. And he looked kind of important and cool, and no one was talking to him. So I walked up to him at 16. I was like, oh, what do you do? Are you a doctor? And he said, no, I'm doing something very different, a little boring. It's like, what is it? I'm a board member in an oil company in Germany, energy, RWE, so bigger thing. And it was like, whoa. And I found it very interesting. I started talking to him, and everything he said was incredibly interesting, like geostrategy and politics and interest rates and everything's like, whoa. And so that triggered me to study economics, like all these doctors, like who pays them? Where does the money come from? And so I studied that. Then I went into strategic marketing, advertising, and growth strategies with very large companies after university. Then got a little bored of that. We did a lot of M&A stuff, so I learned how this works and thought I'm on the wrong end of the table. I don't want to buy companies. I want to sell them. It would be much better, in my opinion. And then I basically came to the United States back in the days, 2008. Wrong timing, right into the crash. Had $1 million lined up in venture capital that evaporated in October 2008 because everyone was panicking. And then did a little finance and startup things, I2X, very cool, seed stage, risk mitigated, portfolio construction. And then through convoluted ways in Berkeley, went into cancer detection with Quantgene. There was a common trait with finance, interesting enough, because both were about machine learning and complex algorithms, because it was about genomics and math. And so I did that for, well, it's a big question. I'm still technically doing it, but we are in the process of, getting me out of there. And and in this whole time frame in 2019 or 18, I always observed Elon. I actually met Elon in 2011, probably. I was starting to really pay attention to Elon in 2008 when I saw SpaceX and Tesla. No one was really paying attention, and I was like, wait a moment, that's crazy. This guy is crazy. What is he doing? And why is it working? So I was like, why is no one paying attention? I told everyone. I was early on on Trump too, but on 3 important people. Obama, I met in 2007 in Washington Square Park when he gave a speech. No one knew him. I saw him and told everyone he's going to be president. Everyone thought I'm crazy. Then I met Elon. Before I met Elon, I observed him. I was telling him, this is crazy. This guy, think about what he does. And I was like, well, whatever. Turns out I was right on him. And Trump, when he came down the elevator, also said he's probably going to win after I saw the reaction of the media. So interesting stuff with Elon. I met him there was like, he got a prize, Silicon Valley, what was it, Forum or something? He got this prize for something where I met him. I had a very quick exchange, but he was a little zoned out. He was talking about multiplanetary species and things like that. So he wasn't listening to me. I was like, oh, Elon, what about this? And he just went on multiplanetary species stuff. But very good to meet him. And then in 2018, I remember that. So I was observing Tesla. I was not invested in Tesla. And in 2018 in Berkeley, I realized, okay, that's the point. Model 3 was coming up. Everyone was saying Tesla is going bankrupt.
Right.
And I was thinking, what are you stupid? Don't you understand the obvious? Like, they're just going to completely kill this. He's building rockets. Now you think he can't build cars, especially electric cars. And I remember this conversation. I was meeting with a JP Morgan wealth management team for complicated reasons. And I was telling them, Tesla, you guys like Tesla. And they were all looking at me as if I was crazy. They didn't say anything, of course, but I could tell. And then I totally loaded up on Tesla right into the run and held it through 2020. I lost some of it for very dumb reasons, independent of Tesla. It's another story, because I got a little exuberant and then did a GameStop mistake, which killed me. I was short at GameStop, but that's a different story. So that all happened. And basically what I realized through all these crazy things from my corporate experience very early on, then startups, and then Tesla, then AI, what's happening now, is that just personally, what I really like is, investing. I also realized that investing is much more than just growing your money, because I'm an economist. So I'm thinking, most people have that attitude that they think investing is like a hobby or like a weird thing. And maybe you make money. If you're very good, you make a lot of money. But what you do is fundamentally not valuable. It's not contributing value to the world. That's what most people think. If you're a doctor, you meet a patient and you fix the patient, maybe. And then the patient is healthy, value created. If you are a construction worker, you build little bricks and then there's a house that wasn't there before. So value created. If you're an architect and so on. But if you're an investor, people think, oh, you're just sitting at home clicking buttons and then you have more money. That's unfair. What are you even doing? But when you really think about it economically, investing and the management of our assets in the sense of our civilization is probably by far the most important job that exists, the highest value creation job. Because steering that capital into where it's best used to generate value for humans is by an enormous distance the most important thing. Because if you're this construction worker, sure, you can build a house. But if you're a bad investor and you decide to steer all the assets into war, that's very bad. You will destroy much more houses than this poor guy built. And if you steer it into the right thing, you will create cities, not just houses, or giant Tesla Gigafactories, or billions of robots. So sure, you're not the one directly creating it, but you are the one responsible that it's being created. It's basically governance. And so that's what, when you really think about it, investing is the ultimate form of governance for a civilization. And that's why we need so many investors, because governance is very complex. The actual governance, the actual decision-making, where do our resources go so we benefit from it as a whole? So just a little rant. And then finally, why I'm now fully doing it and doing nothing else, I think that was true in the past. But in the future with AGI, it's not just true, it becomes fundamentally nearly the only truth. Because now, if all labor goes away, all technology goes away as input factors for the economy, because we can just create it through robots and AI, the only thing left is capital allocation. The decision making, what should happen, that's capital allocation. And so it becomes exponentially more important and exponentially more profitable, because it's the ultimate value creation. So that's a little theory here, but that's why I'm so excited, because I'm pretty sure I'm right about it. And if I'm right about it, it has very concrete effects on our lives. It's not just a theory.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for diving almost right in with a little bit of history. Two things. One thing I have to comment, if you and I had known each other in 2008 when you came over, we would have obviously suggested to you to take massive advantage of all the cheap houses that are out there, because we obviously, our main mentoring work at Idea Wealth Grower is to help people to get into real estate who have normal W-2 jobs, and especially oftentimes are somewhere around the edges of the country, close to the coast, where it's relatively seen expensive, and would love to invest where the properties actually perform. The other aspect I find quite interesting is, and I'm wondering if you have a theory why that is. If I go back to what you mentioned, to me, somehow, for some reason, both in Europe, where we both came from, as well as in the US, I have not really seen any kind of significant public effort to educate people in the direction to say, okay, what do you think between the moment that somebody has a great idea and decides to start a business, and that business really starting to get some serious traction so that you might even know the name of it? What do you think happens in that? And that's, in my opinion, exactly where that situation happens that you describe. Either, if you take SpaceX as an example, it happens that you have access to people who have a lot of money they want to allocate and keep the company private, at least so far. I think we're at 350 billion, it's still private, probably the most valuable private company right now. Or the other example would be like, I don't know, you take Meta and you're sitting somewhere at a university and you want to do a Facebook, right? And even if you have that idea and you have maybe the ability to program something, but to make Facebook into the company that we know by name, needed investors or investing capital or capital allocation, just like you said. So that aspect of investing is basically participating in the evolution of a business. And I think before we started recording, we both kind of like looked at instances across the calendar when we were smart or lucky or a little bit of both to invest in something that just made a lot of sense, just like you said, right? Like if he can build rockets, he can build cars, and if he needs more money, he can go somewhere. And that's actually the story, right? Like with Model 3, the place was about to go out of payroll, and he just asked a few friends and they said, sure, we give you the money, right? So
Exactly.
so that aspect of not really talking much about how is a business growing from its founding to becoming a more well-known or maybe even publicly traded company, I've never understood why that's not being discussed more. But when we now introduce this transition from the age of extraction, as Tony Senior calls it, to the age of abundance, I know you're doing some work there, but I'm also wondering a little bit, how much more important would you say is it to have assets, own assets?
Well, that's a very good question. And I just love economics. And I think it's like there are two sides of the coin, no pun intended. Giant gold coin, the size of the earth. That's the gold coin. And there are two sides to the gold coin.
Okay.
One is economics, which is the totality of civilizational value created and the systems. The other side is your checkings account. How much money do I have? These
Right.
are very related. They are just the same coin from two sides. And of course, you're more on the, checkings account side, which is very important, or not, like whatever assets you have. I think it's very good to understand both sides. And then really in YouTube and everywhere, like focus on the checkings account because people want money and that makes sense. But if you can make much more money if you understand the other side. What is actually happening? Why do I make money? And to your question, there's this famous formula in economics, very simple formula, that all economic output and value created, very important formula, remember the formula, all value created in the world, in an economy, comes from three factors, input factors. The first one is capital, because you need some form of asset nearly always to do something. And capital is just representative of any asset. If you have 1 billion tons of oil, that's technically also capital, or bricks, or whatever you want, chips. The next one is labor. You need some form of work that goes in. And the final input is technology. Because if you have the same amount of capital, the same amount of labor, you can still produce twice as much with twice as good of a technology. And that is also infrastructure. And so capital was always extremely important. That's why if you have capital, you can just create value by giving it to the other two factors. Now what's happening, and I'm talking about the economics part of the coin, and then we'll talk about your part of the coin. So in the age of AGI, that's very important. Both labor and technology go away. They're not factors anymore. Why? Because now you can take capital and directly one-on-one convert it into labor by buying robots or buying even more sooner, AGI, like white-collar workers who are just sitting in your chips. And you can also buy very soon technology. You can create it on the spot with AGI. You can say, you know what, I want a new drug that does that. Okay, done. I mean, drugs are the most complicated thing, but you know what I mean. And so that means not that ASI and AGI is just going to take over. That's not that simple because they don't own the capital and they will not own it very quickly because the humans will protect their capital because that's actually the decision-making. So capital was 1/3 of everything. Now it becomes more and more everything. Or let's say half of it. I have another thing coming. But on the other side of the coin, what does it mean for yourself? Well, when it comes to yourself, it's very extreme what it means. It means you will not have a job very soon. The fact that labor falls to the wayside means you will be out of a job.
Right.
Probably in latest 4 years, by 2030, nearly no one will have a job anymore, with the exception of some fringe, physical labor, brain surgeon people like that, right? They will have another 5 years of jobs, but then they're gone too. So that is very extreme. And so how do you make money in the future? Not by working, because you can't compete with robots or AI. So the answer is you make money by capital allocation. And that just in everyday terms means you need to have assets. That will be very important. So that's kind of the bad news if you don't have assets now. But there's very good news. This whole change on the right side of the coin means there will be massive, massive asset appreciation. Much greater growth than before.
Would you then say there is a window that those who have not done much in converting basically money from dependable relationships like work into assets, what would you say? Is it that was 4 years or is it shorter than that? And it probably started yesterday or like 5 years ago. How would you describe it for anybody who says, okay, I listen, I hear what Joe is saying, I can comprehend why this is happening. So what do I do? How do I get in? I mean, obviously, as idea wealth growers, we preference real estate, but we also have stocks, we have gold, we have other types of assets. What would you say? Is there a window? Is there a window of opportunity that we kind of have to be aware of? Is it going to close or is it going to be harder to participate?
Well, I think it's I think there's a German way of approaching it and an American way. Okay. And just to cut it short, the German way sucks and the American way is the right way. So the German way is to pontificate about it. It's like, oh, is it 1 year we have or 3 or 4? The American way is like, who cares? It's some time window that we cannot exactly determine. The question is, what do we do now? And the answer is save as much money as quickly as you can. Don't spend it and then pour it into investments that make you the highest return at the lowest risk.
So that's an accelerated fire movement, so to speak.
Exactly. So, of course, then the mother of all questions is, what is that investment? And the answer is, well, it depends on your background and knowledge and everything. I can just tell you strategically, I think there are two important mega trends. One mega trend that benefits nearly everything, but some things more than others, is I think inflation, asset inflation, is a very, very real thing. I will get into that in a second. And the second thing is AGI. Everything AI and AGI. Tesla, Nvidia, Palantir, and so on. There are tactics to be considered. I think Palantir is overvalued and goes sideways just because it's went too high. I think Nvidia is a good middle ground, went up a lot, but also backed with massive profit growth. So this is just going to keep going up. Tesla, in my opinion, is super interesting because they're at this inflection point where they have new, like ridiculously super big revenue streams coming that are right now zero, which is very nice because it puts you in a startup situation where you can have a total hockey stick inflection on the stock. And most people have a hard time seeing it. So Palantir, a little overvalued tactically. Long term, this thing's going to kill it, in my opinion. Then you have Nvidia, which is just going up because it's just driven by profit and profits going up. And then Tesla, totally overvalued on the current core business, totally undervalued on the new businesses that are coming, and they're coming very soon. So nice inflation thing. So that's the AI thing. There's more, of course. And then you have crypto, my other favorite, because of the asset inflation situation. And we can get into that. Like there is just no way that I see how Bitcoin and Ethereum, you should only buy flagships, in my opinion, are not driven to the moon, because how not? And then I'm not a real estate expert, but of course, in any asset inflation cycle, real estate benefits always. So I don't know much about it. You're much more an expert. I don't like that it's illiquid, of course. I like liquidity. And I see enormous upside in liquid assets, and that's always preferable if you have the choice. But I think I'm pretty sure people will do very well in real estate too. And you can leverage the hell out of real estate. That's the attractive part.
Yeah,
so
exactly. I mean, sorry for interrupting. I mean, that leverage part is actually a little bit of a door opener when you're asking yourself, how can I get with a very limited, if you say, save as much as possible, and now I want to allocate in a diversified portfolio, even if you say each asset class in equal chunks, then you have that huge benefit if you stay in the residential real estate where we are hanging out for the most part, that you can get basically 100% asset value with 20% of your money, which is pretty much the only place where, if you say, okay, I imagine every class grows 10% per year, just to name a number, well, there you can basically leverage 5-1 with the same amount of money. That's as a gateway to say, okay, how can I now, let's say we have
that's,
this.
by the way, Axel, it's very funny because that you say 5-1, 10% baseline, because I make these crazy statements that I'm absolutely backing up with history and like with what you actually made. I think you should make 50% a year. And in real estate, a lot of people actually make that. They never think about it like this, but when they do the math, okay, how much did I actually invest in capital, and where I'm at in 5 years, they often made 50% on their actual investment. So,
well, it's not even 5 years. I mean, just if you're, just for a moment, for the really super easy anywhere listening person, let's assume there were like a nice little flat that you could get an apartment or something for $100,000 somewhere, right? And you put $20,000 in, and the place, you don't even need to be egregious. You say, okay, it increases in value 5% per year, which is, I think, not too bad. Right. So you're basically making $5,000 on $20,000. So that, and
no,
then
I meant 50%, not in 5 years. I meant 50% CAGR. So that means
yeah. But I'm getting there, right? Like, so you're making that just on the appreciation. Then the tenants obviously pay you, so they pay down the mortgage, which is equity. Then you have basically the increase year over year in your rental income, just if for no other reason than just to train the tenant to be used to that. And on top of that, you have the depreciation. And with the new laws, I mean, if you're for a $100,000 apartment, nobody would do it. But if you were to say, okay, I want to invest, like one thing we do is a brand new build to rent development, gated community, all new houses between 1,600 and 2,500 square feet. You can do basically appreciation maximized by the new laws from the Trump administration, where a huge amount, depending on what your tax load is, a huge amount of the investment that you can depreciate can be in the first 5 years. So 50% with that kind of a setup is not even really a stretch. You don't
And
have to
here's
do
the thing, Axel. So just for the viewers, because you're totally right on it. But if you're like a newbie and you're listening to Axel right now, it's like, oh my, I don't even, I can't do this. I don't understand a word. Well, what I'm saying. Here's the thing that I wanted to stress. Like, you don't have to understand everything Axel is saying, or even what I'm saying. All you need to understand is that a lot of people who think about this a lot will tell you 50% a year is apps pre-tax. So you have to figure out your taxes. That's a whole different thing. But let's say pre-tax 50% a year is absolutely reasonable, not just in real estate, but on a whole set of assets in a diversified basket. Do AGI, do crypto, do real estate, and then whatever other trick you have up your sleeve. So that's a first principle insight. And that wasn't always the case, but it becomes more and more safe to say for many complicated reasons. If that is the case, and you put down your pencil, pen to pencil, pencil to pen, and think about what that means. It means if you make $100,000 in salary, how much do you need in order to live off that? Let's say $300,000 after tax with some savings or something. You only need $300,000 in assets and you are free. I mean, I'm taking an extreme case here, but when you really think it through, that's not what people expect. They think I need 2 million, 3 million, and I have zero. I can never get there. Well, if you have a job that pays you 6 figures, which a lot of people have, or if you, whatever, or can get on assets, your hands on assets, or have some assets, getting to, let's say, 300,000 is not rocket science. Right. It is still a sort of science if you don't know anything right now. But what it also means is that investing is your job. That's what I want people to understand, because we are not trained like that in our stupid fake news education system, right? They teach you everything except what you should know. And there's a reason for that. So the real education should tell people, sitting in nice coffee shops with your laptop and looking at numbers and doing some scribbling is the most valuable job in the world that you can actually do, where you make the most money, or wherever you want to sit. You can also sit somewhere else. But most people don't perceive it as, oh, he's just brainstorming and thinking about stuff and putting some stuff into Google Sheets. Yeah, it's called work because it creates more value. And if you have, let's say, $1 million and you increase just by sitting in these coffee shops, and you can travel through Europe or US or whatever, Latin America, whatever you like, and do that, that job is more valuable, much more valuable than the job you currently do. And it's much more fun. Because just increasing your return by 5%, if you have $1 million, means you made $50,000 sitting in these coffee shops. And that is real, intelligent work that's not just as valuable as putting bricks somewhere or helping patients. It's much more valuable. And that's what people need to understand. Just because it's abstract doesn't mean it's not more valuable.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Joe. I think two things I like to mention for the listeners or for viewers. Number one is I actually go one step further and say, make investing your passion, right? Then it's something you really love to do. It's not like a job that you might feel you have to do. So that's one aspect. The other one, and I mean, I'm sure you have benefited from that, and that's what our business basically constantly offers, is to say, you don't need to be an expert to get started. You basically, I mean, coming from the European or from the German system, you are an apprentice at the beginning and you're working your way towards mastery. And who do you learn from? From somebody who has gone the path before, made all the mistakes, and you can learn from that. That's what
from
made
YouTube.
me.
That's the secret.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, I still feel, maybe I'm old-fashioned, that, ultimately want to have somebody to talk to. That's why I'm offering the mentoring program. But ultimately, the point is, hooking up with people who have the history and can prove that they have actually done it. Like you and I, we talked about these kind of sometimes very rare but impactful incidences on the scale of life, so to speak, when you consciously, subconsciously, or for whatever other reason, made a decision that had way more impact than you probably anticipated in the moment on that day. Like I mentioned, like, I listened to that one video from Tom Nash and decided, wow, this is kind of weird. Can I really get 1,000 shares of Palantir for $10,000? I couldn't believe it. And it didn't happen, right? And same thing, you mentioned the story about Tesla. So I think this make it your passion and find somebody who is helping you until you feel comfortable to do it on your own. Those two things together, I believe, will become really the part of the formula of the future. And if we go back to this AGI, Age of Abundance stuff, that would, I believe, still be something where not everybody is suddenly flip a switch. We have the AGI world, and now everybody knows how to
No,
invest.
you will get the age of AGI will create unlimited wealth, but it's definitely not distributed randomly. It's distributed according to capital and
Right.
some what I call reality engineering, which is like the only job of the future, which is basically taking capital and building stuff, not just allocating it, but actually being the builder with the capital. But that's just an extension of investing in a way. So, I mean, that's exact. I totally agree, and that's also why we created PioneerLands.net. Go there. It's free, and that's like our community where I'm saying, look, guys, if you are smart enough to watch this video, or follow Axel, or follow my channel, or go to her, like the whole crowd, and you think that's true what we are saying, you should seek out other people who think the same and know stuff and are investors. And that's what we have on PioneerLands.net. It's like you get a forum, you get all these different spaces. And we just want to find the people who have it in their brains and hearts to actually follow that insight. Because most people don't. You can talk to them all day long. They just, oh, now I have to go back to work. It's like, what did I just tell you? You should rethink this. But most people just, it doesn't click. And so the people where it clicks are, first of all, I want to help them, but also there is some self-interest here. I just believe in the future, not everything will be nice. It will be a tough future, very tough future for many reasons. And I rather am surrounded and have a network of thousands of people who get it. That will be a key strategy to survival and to thrive. You want people who get it,
Absolutely.
not people who don't get it.
Right, I agree. And I mean, there's some research, I'm sure you're aware of it, where to really make an impact, to really affect change, oftentimes people think you need to have a significant number of people on your side. But the research basically shows you're talking anywhere between 2.5% and 4% of a community, right? So it is comparatively small. Partially, I have always said part of the reason is because there are so many lemmings who don't really get going until somebody tells them to. So you don't even need to have those on your radar. Now,
And I, to accent to that point, because we talk about money and now influence, uh, after not even trying too hard, we just have an online community and I have a channel. We have now 35,000 followers. I think we can hit probably 50,000 this year, probably 100, maybe 200,000 next year if I do what I want to do. But it's not ginormous. But just with this little effort, and we are now launching a whole software, like I call it the Pioneer operating system, where we have a whole operating system where we have apps for finance, or for wealth management, but also for networking and also for media, to give us, the pioneers, like what we need: culture, capital, and community. But even with that little effort, which is all fun for me, we have $1.8 billion under self-management now, just Tesla shares. So I didn't even do the math or inquire how much total assets we have, probably 5 billion or 4 billion. That's a lot of dough for just running a little channel. And I'm saying that's the assets my pioneers that join me in finance just manage themselves in their own accounts. That's non-trivial. If we grow that by 5x or maybe 7x, which is not impossible, we would be the largest Tesla shareholder in the world after Elon. So that's not
yeah,
trivial.
no, absolutely. And I mean, this is a little bit of a pledge for like-mindedness, I would say, right? Like when the people get attracted because they have, you call it a common vision or a common goal or both, a common mission, maybe all three. That has happened in all kinds of different things. And I think that is one of the things that will be needed in this age of abundance, AGI kind of world. One thing coming to the end, I wanted to ask you a little bit about is, and I'm sure you have seen it, I think you may have even commented on it on X, when Elon basically responded to somebody who was saying, okay, when we're going a little further, when we're getting to like 2030, 2035 or somewhere in between, then with this labor being $1 and the robots are doing it, and energy, according to Tony Seba, is basically going to be free, and the robots are going to build increasingly bigger solar farms. How does this UBI thing look like? And his response was basically, well, it's
I mean,
not
that's
going
my favorite topic, because I pushed back hard on Elon. And by the way, Tony Seba, I love him. He's a visionary technology predictor, but I'm more, here's my short take on it. I think we have genius minds like Elon and genius analysts like Tony on 50% of the future. And 50% of the future is the whole tech stuff, right? It's about AGI and robots. We have zero. I'm the only one, I'm the pioneer on that front. But I think there's an entire universe of value, civilization, everything on the other side. And that universe is the theory and practice and engineering of civilization, which is basically the social sciences, which died in the 1920s. We don't have them anymore. We just have idiots running around. I mean, some of them are maybe smart. I don't want to offend everyone. But this whole thing is not there anymore. But think about it. Think about cities. Think about food, health, community, culture, media. No one understands this stuff. There's no Elon. There's no one who's engineering this. So we become more happy, more cohesive, more happy communities. All this migration debates, like no one even tries to understand anything. Like, how does this work with the humans? When do they give their money to their other humans? When do they treat them badly? When is it an extractor economy? Not in Tony Seba's sense, but in my sense. I'm talking extraction is not about Mother Earth. It's about one human, the other human. Is this human just robbing that other guy, or are they just sharing everything? Well, sometimes they do this and sometimes they do this. Why?
Well, supposedly they're bartering all the time.
And so,
no, I'm with you. Actually, it's kind of funny because every time I've seen many interviews. I'm sure you have too, where people have asked Elon, okay, so how is governance on Mars actually look like if that city that you want to build there, or that new place for humanity, and his, I'm hesitant to call it cop out, is pretty much to say, well, the people have to figure this out themselves. Almost like, no, I want to talk about everything, but not about that. So
yeah, so that's what I mean. Like, that's why we also have PioneerLands. I'm saying, even if you're just an entrepreneur, am I gonna try to compete with Jensen Huang or Elon Musk? No, they're doing a very good job. They can do this much better. They are much smarter than you in that space. But I tell you, someone has to go into this other space. And that other space is at least as large as all of AGI and rockets and space combined. It's the future of humanity and how we actually deal with humans. And this has economic implications. If you solve that, then you have true abundance if you combine, because then you figure out how the humans behave nicely to each other. And that's at least as complex to engineer as an Nvidia chip or as a rocket. It's not just, whatever, we vote or something, some dumb stuff. It's like, that's like saying, how do you go to Mars? And it's like, well, we build a rocket. It's like, yeah, but how?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I don't know.
I recently, in one of my recent articles for the newsletter, I basically looked at that a little bit and came to the conclusion, okay, there are these futurists, these kind of science fiction people. I've always been fascinated by them. And I asked myself, okay, so what are they seeing? Well, have they come up with something when you look really further into the future? And I think they also copped out in a way, because they said, okay, the only option that we really see is that we are in some way involved with conflict. Like if you go, I don't know if you ever watched Star Trek or Raumschiff
Yeah,
Enterprise
of
or
course.
something like that. They claimed they're going exploring world, but every episode was some kind of conflict with somebody. Star Wars is all conflict, right? Now,
I mean, it's Dune. Look at Dune, a great example.
Dude,
It's all about
all the
it's all
different
about
ones, all the
tribal wars, right? So
yeah,
it's well, exactly. So and magic and mystical. Oh, here's which is, I'm not mocking that. I'm saying this is what they describe. And I think it's super, super important that we start being, it's like investing, right? Where most people say, oh, invest whatever. I work 99% of the time, and 1% I say, oh, just buy this fund. It's like, this should be the other way around.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
with society, it's the same thing. I invent super chips and robots, and then we are like, but what about the human society? And it's like, well, we just vote, I guess. It's like, that's your
Well,
plan.
so far, but actually, when I have asked, people have actually responded that the reason that we don't hear anything about it because it's supposedly boring. And every time I say, okay, let's sit down and talk about this boring thing just for 5 minutes, it suddenly becomes super, super, super interesting, right? But
Also, how is it boring how humans live together or not, or kill each other? It's not boring. That's the most important thing.
true, but the argument about boring is often, like, okay, why don't they make movies about it? Why don't we write science fiction series about it and stuff like that? The argument. What I'm still, I want to come back to that question still. Is it going to be UBI, UHI, UMI? Where are you on that spectrum? And
Well,
what
I
is,
think there's one person like David Shapiro. He's super cool on YouTube. He's one of the post-labor economics theorists. He's amazing. David, like, he has all these great thoughts. But my criticism is always, dudes, the idea that we can sit down here and construct some solution. It's always the nerds. And I mean it in the most loving sense. I'm a little bit of a nerd. Like all the nerds, he wears a Star Trek suit. All the tech nerds who love Star Trek think about, ooh, how do we have to design UBI so it works? Well, what do you mean so it works? What is the engineering problem here? And they completely don't understand the engineering problem. They think the engineering problem is, oh, you're sitting there, you have some income and some people. How do we distribute? No, the engineering problem is you have Goldman Sachs, Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin. That's your engineering problem. And you think you can sit down with Putin and say, ooh, I know you think all day long how you fairly distribute the assets, but I can help you. I have a better idea. That's not how everyone thinks. That's not how Goldman Sachs thinks, or Vladimir Putin, or Saddam Hussein, or Donald Trump. The problem is it's called power struggles, power vacuums, and people who are heat-seeking missiles for power, they normally organize societies because they pour the most brain power into it. And you need to handle this entire thing. So the engineering problem is a very different one. How do we confront the reality? And how do we make sure it doesn't completely run into a wall? And you have to anticipate social structures and power hierarchies and the tools that might help you break it or invent alternative power strategies. It's also PioneerLands, what we're trying to do. It has to do with crypto, owning your own currency, all the foundational elements of a society that you first need to control. You can't go into a system where the Fed prints money and gives it to the banks, where you just say, well, and now we are somehow implementing some smart system. So the problem of power is the most important problem. If you just invent some system, it's completely useless. How do you implement it? It's like ignoring physics. It's like, I have a great rocket, it goes to Mars and back in 2 minutes. The only problem is it ignores physics. Well, then it doesn't work. So rather, instead of like having these hypothetical, oh, UBI or not, you have to understand power mechanics. Like, okay, who's in charge? Why are they in charge? Can someone else be in charge? How would we get that someone else in charge? And if they would be in charge, what do they want? That's the engineering problem. And that's why I'm saying, if you think you can invent something, walk into the White House and be the president and implement it, even if you would be the president, you couldn't implement it. That's not going to happen. And so much more important than these questions is what can we do to ensure we have a good future and then help other people to join us and engineer that. And that has to do, so that's my thinking, because everything else is like a waste of time, in my opinion. You can, same with like UBI is similar to the ASI doom debate. How do we prevent AGI from killing us all? It's a very important debate to have, but you also have to anticipate who's in charge. And do you really think you can just invent something, go to Sam Altman and say, I want to take over OpenAI. I know better how to keep it safe. It's like, good luck. So,
right.
So I just want to, my point is, of course, I have ideas. I have a lot of ideas. I just can tell you they don't matter too much. We need ideas, how to restructure our own lives and communities and get more power for ourselves, power to self-govern and make sure we have a good life and income. That's where, and then we can spread the word and help other people to join us. But you can't just walk into DC and try to do these things. Even Elon has completely failed, in case you didn't notice. So good luck with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that would be actually a great follow-up episode. One, just as a thought experiment, when you're talking about how does the world with AGI look like, starting from the current power structure. I've wondered for a while now, would a new system have less outsourcing of decision power from regular quote unquote voters to a small community of people? I mean, if we're both from Germany, there are 83 million people, but you have basically 500 people, and even those, not all of the 500 are really the decision makers. It's probably 10% of those 500, so 50 people from a political perspective are really the ones who influence what happens for the other 83 million. And yes, it's a power thing, but it's also, I think, fair to ask, is that the only way it works? Or are there other,
let me put it like this: power, human power, social power is the same as physical energy. It's always going to be how it works. The question is, can you reorganize it, the power?
Right.
And that's
without turning it into socialism.
Well, you have to reorganize it by not just like communism, where in the end everyone is dead. You have to reorganize it like an engineer. You have to like, well, let's see. It's like a very complicated engine you need to reconstruct to achieve a certain thing. And that's also why I'm bullish on very different things than most people. I think for me, it's like the entire future value creation of humanity is basically this giant sphere, and half of the sphere is very clear. That's like Elon. It's Nvidia. It's like the tech piece and maybe the capital piece. Right. The other half, the entire other half of all value of humanity in the future is completely ignored. And that is the humans. And that is the question, what does this whole engineering look like for our societies? And how do we develop that skill to do that? And who does it? And I think that will also coincide with enormous value creation, like financial value creation, the more you solve it. And I think the societies who are actually most close to getting to where we need to be are kind of the overlooked ones. It's Switzerland, Denmark, Iceland, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. So they may be the Netherlands, but that's already getting sketchy. These are the countries who have shown that they can operate successfully and comparatively fairly with high buy-in, social buy-in from everyone, despite being super high developed. Because Poland and other countries that are very successful, they're kind of cheating because they're coming from the bottom and are now going up like crazy. Right. That's the easy part. I'm not saying the Polish shouldn't be very proud of what they did, but let's see if they can, maybe they can continue it, but it's getting exponentially harder once you are where they are now, like very high developed. So, but the Scandinavians and Switzerland, they have done this for a long time. And when you are there, you're like, these people have figured something out. Right. And they're behaving more fair. And some Americans just call it socialism. It's like a complete misunderstanding how these things work. If you go to Sweden, it's definitely not socialism what's going on. It's very capitalist, but it has all kinds of complex things in there and culture and people. So we need to learn to be engineers like Elon with that stuff. Not so emotional, just why does this work? What's my hypothesis? Can we test it? Is it wrong or not? And then refine it. And these are not one-off shots. I always have to laugh when people say, oh, it's capitalism or socialism. It's like, dudes, that's like saying, how do you build a Blackwell GPU? Well, you pour in some sand and then you add electricity. It's like, good luck. You're not going to get a Blackwell chip. So, and then they say, oh, communism is so dumb. They're pouring in wood. Okay, fine. It's never going to work with wood. But with sand, you have to do more than just pouring in the sand and put some electricity on top. So that's what we have to realize. And the price you can get from that is enormous. It's unlimited, actually. So it's worth figuring that out.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. And I think as we're progressing on figuring that out, and I think you're going to and are building a great community with PioneerLand, we should check in every so often. But until we check in again, how can people actually join that community?
Well, you go to pioneerlands.net and join. It's free. We have a
PioneerLands.
citizen level that costs you $9 a month, but that's voluntary. Without paying it, you still can participate in nearly all of the discussions, but you don't get the Google Sheets and models. Soon we will have the Pioneer operating system, probably in 4 weeks, where you get also a lot of free stuff, but can communicate and things like that. And so I'm very determined to keep building this, because my interest is not so much to build a business. My interest is to build a mini civilization, because my gut feeling is the age of abundance will be ironic in a way, where you have tremendous abundance and tremendous chaos and probably violence, because Elon will have abundance. That's why he's such a big fan. He basically says, look, it's going to be a world of abundance because I will have $10 trillion. Like, yes, that's why I own Tesla shares. But Elon has to understand, him owning $10 trillion doesn't necessarily help you unless you're a Tesla shareholder. So, we have to understand abundance will be extremely unequally distributed. And if you think the politicians that destroy our countries right now are going to suddenly turn into geniuses who are very nice to you, it might be a mistake. I'm just warning people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a very warranted warning. At the same time, this is so early, if you ask me, that by listening to you, by taking you up on your invitation, people have the opportunity to really start in on the ground floor. And I know, regardless which type of investment you're looking at, people constantly tell me, I wish I would have 20 years ago. Then you fill in whatever they would have, but it's always in the past. Here we are, and that's why we're doing the show. That's why we're doing these interviews. I'm very grateful, Joe, that you came on, to give people the insight that the opportunity is there, and all they need to do is a tiny little bit of action to join and participate. So.
And it's and Axel, maybe to conclude this is more like life insight, not so much anything else. This, what you just said, comes down to a deep inner attitude you should develop. Like, it does not matter how bad your situation is, you think, how much time you have left, whatever it is. It's like, if you're in a war, the Russians are coming, maybe you're Russian, whatever, whoever is coming, who wants to kill you, and you're there and say, oh, I don't have ammunitions anymore. It doesn't matter. Assess the situation. What do I have? What can I do now? And what can I do to increase my chance of not getting killed? And here you can see it fear-based or greed-based, both is good. Okay, clearly something is happening. On one side, the walls are closing in. On the other side, the opportunities are opening up. But whatever perspective you have, it's happening now. So don't wait, just do something. If you can save $100 a month, it's $100 better than zero. It's that simple.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why pioneer is such a great term, because if you really go to the basics to say what is a pioneer, that's exactly it. Somebody who basically assesses the situation and says, I want to take action.
Yeah, I took it from back in the days in the West, right? You have your plan wagon, you go somewhere, there's like a creek and a forest, and then you stop, okay, fine, build the town. No one can say like, but, oh, we don't have wood. Well, there is like a forest, then chop it. Oh, we don't have an axe. Well, then just make an axe somehow, right? Oh, I'm not a banker. I can't staff the bank. Well, guess what? We are all not bankers. You're the banker now. So it's like, this is PioneerLands, and we are in this luxurious position that we have a wide open space suddenly, the space of AGI. So that's why I love the term pioneer.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joe, for coming on. It was a wonderful conversation. I hope we can do it again and stay connected and see how PioneerLand is helping all of us to see that other side.
Very good. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.